Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Laura with Connect My Brain. So glad that you are tuning in. We are going to be diving into some excellent topics, and I can't wait to share information with you. So, without further ado, let's get right to it. Today, I want to talk about, are children really resilient? I think I've heard that statement so many times. And now, after being in practice 28 years working with children, I really question that statement. Are they really resilient? And what impacts their resiliency? So that's what I really would like to focus on today. I started noticing more and more how kids would judge themselves so harshly at doing such an easy task of an exercise or doing a game that's meant to be therapeutic. And if they didn't get it right in their mind, they would really condemn and judge themselves. And I even see this in adults. While the majority of the practice is children, we do see adults as well. And I mentioned this before on an earlier podcast that we have some eye therapies downstairs, and you get feedback after each cycle if you selected the spheres correctly or not. And the responses that I saw really intrigued me as to where does this begin? They will be working on an eye therapy, and if they select the correct targets, then they get a solid ring. If they don't select the correct targets, they get a ring, like a circle. And so you could literally see the disapproval if they didn't get the solid ring, but you never saw the excitement about getting it correctly. And that always fascinated me. Why are we only going to pay attention? And you know me, these are always key words to keep in mind. Why do we only pay attention when we don't get it correct? And why is that attention then pulled back in and judging the self? Well, I also see this with children, especially in an assessment. So we'll be going through a variety of games and therapies, and we're just observing everything that they're doing. But they'll always ask, did I get it right? Did I get it right? There's such an energy behind, did I get it right? Now, don't misunderstand me. You know me, I don't like to take anything to the extreme. And a little competition is always great. Okay. But where does this start? And I really started sitting back and I started looking, and it really does start in childhood, that there is this right and wrong, and we're always striving for the right and beginning to take on such severe disappointment if we didn't get it correct. And here at CMB, Connect My Brain, we really focus on that when you are here with us, this is your practice time. You are not being judged. We are here to provide strategies. We are here to assist and show you an easier way. For example, you can see frustration when a child cannot coordinate their body in a cross crawl pattern in an exercise. We can add colored tape to the corresponding limbs and then take out a lot of the verbal direction and simply say, now move to orange, move to green. And it really simplifies the movement. But what you see is that the child is now in control of themselves, and the only thing that they have to be able to do is tell the differences in the color. And that starts to empower the champion. But I am very focused on breaking this pattern because I think this is part of a bigger picture that if it isn't broken, they're going to continue with it, and they're going to take this with them, and it's going to show up in every aspect of life. In fact, there are many cases that I have seen over the years where you could put that in as part of the equation, that the child really never connected to self and enjoyed the process of learning because of the struggles that they had and constantly feeling very beaten down, to where what would you innately do? Something that is constantly beating you down, you would push it away. It's a very human response. And then how far is that going to reach? It's not only going to be in academia, it's not going to just be in my ability to learn something, but it's going to trickle out. It's going to trickle out socially. They start to feel incredibly awkward about being around other people and may even adapt some behaviors that would allow them to maybe feel like they can connect. So this part is really important, to just make sure that we're aware of what that child is actually feeling. And because they don't have a point of reference, it isn't going to be easy for them to give you any kind of feedback that they're okay or they're not okay. I've seen this repeatedly in children where they know something's going on. They can tell that maybe they don't interact with school quite like their peers. And we're always going to bring school into the equation because that's what a child does all day long for 3/4 of a year. And then we get a summer, and maybe they're going to go to camp, or maybe not, but that's what they do all day long. So school has got to be the environment in which we're picking up some of these cues. But if you constantly feel like you're being beaten down, you're not going to enjoy that process of going to school. So just the mere fact of a child giving pushback to going to school, a child giving pushback that they are not enjoying school, that they're not enjoying learning, is a red flag. I really want to empower people to realize subtle cues of what may actually be a cry for help, but just doesn't have any other way of presenting that information to you. I saw it just the other day in the office, again with that same eye therapy, but this time it was a young a young man. We're going to say in puberty years, and the frustration of not getting it correct has now been laid down for several years, to where there just isn't any enthusiasm to change or to go after. And that's an important part. If we don't have enthusiasm, it's going to be very difficult for that individual to learn, because part of learning is the pure novelty that gets ignited in your brain, that you're excited about what it is that you're learning, the newness of what you're learning, and what you want to do so that you can continue figuring it out, whatever that figuring it out is related to. We had another young person in the office who was actually identified as being lazy, that they wouldn't do their work, and finding out that they really had no control over their eyes, how they moved, not visual acuity like me wearing glasses, but more oculomotor, the way the muscles wrap around the eyeballs. And one of the most exciting things, not only for us, but for the parents, was they would report how the child was going towards new things, learning, taking the initiative to want to learn how to do something different, like moving a yo-yo. So children should absolutely go towards. When a child is pulling away, that is a red flag. Children should never pull away. And, the list is endless as to, well, why would they be pulling away? I'll try to give you like a bullet point list and highlight a few of them in hopes of trying to capture and share information that's going to help another family with a child that could be struggling. Or perhaps it's an adult who just can't put their finger on it. Maybe we will mention something that will help you connect the dots. Things are always going to be potentially back at the very beginning of time. We must remember that there is so much about human wiring that really goes on before these babies are even conceived in the womb. It matters what these two people are doing that have come together and conceived a baby. It matters about your state of health. It matters about what goes on in your pregnancy. It matters what goes on in the delivery. It matters what goes on in the first few years of life. So, things that can really influence how easy it is going to be for a child to learn. Let's just start with, there could have been a lot of stress during pregnancy. And I bring that one up because over the last few years, there's actually been research done that is talking about this situation that all of us were in. And the babies that were being born during this time, conceived and being born during this time, are already being identified with cognitive deficits. Okay, so it's a timeline. It's a timeline about when you conceived and had your baby. If this is a new baby right now, or maybe it's a baby 2 or 3 years old. Then we look at a delivery. Is that delivery vaginal or a C-section, or was an instrument used? There is a lot of information regarding any kind of interruption to a expected vaginal delivery, not with Pitocin, not with anything, just a normal delivery. That's what a normal delivery really is. I think I still get very surprised that I will have parents say to me, well, I had a normal delivery. And they'll call a C-section a normal delivery. They'll call Pitocin a normal delivery. Now, again, no judgment. We're never going there, but these are not normal deliveries. This is something that Pitocin is going to push delivery. C-section, you're completely bypassing the big squeeze on the brain, exposure to good bacteria, and that can lead to a host of issues. Another one that I would like to touch on, I don't want to do a deep dive today, but I want to touch on it, is children that are then put up for adoption. I can't even imagine the place of an individual who has come to that decision. Okay. And again, no judgment. But the issue that I would like to focus on is more about the adoptive child, because I think I can make some good examples. And I've worked with many adopted children and I've seen the same patterns. So we have to know that when a baby is inside its mother's womb, that baby is intimately connected to mom's rhythm. I can tell you personally that in times of being afraid or scared or worried or sad, the only thing that was very comforting to me was laying my head on my mother's chest and hearing and feeling her heartbeat. There's a rhythm. When a child is adopted, there's a separation, there's a loss. Now, I think every adoptive parent out there is absolutely doing everything they possibly can. But this is something for the individual. And again, children don't have a point of reference, so they're not going to bring this information to you. There's an incredible book out there called Primal Wound. And the story is about a woman who adopted a baby, raised her, and then had a biological child. But the two children, the two girls, were raised, in her opinion, exactly the same. But there was such a difference between the two that she really could not understand it. Well, she's actually a researcher. And what she did is she went out and she did research. And it was her conclusion from what she found by interviewing thousands of people that have been adopted, that there is a primal, like a beginning wound in which all else is going to build on top. This can make a child have struggles all of their own, okay? It's very common that children that are put up for adoption do struggle academically, socially, etc. So here we are trying to make the best of our world, because we're not really at a school age, we're not really making that connection in our mind yet that I'm adopted and therefore everything is going to be hard for me. No, that's not the point. Everybody tries to also bring about the best type of life that can happen for a child. But that child's struggling, and now the child has got academic issues, has social issues, and the child is getting the feedback again of, you're not doing it right. You're not doing this right. You're having a hard time making friends. And it's this beating down that begins to flow with them. And it doesn't stop. If all things are not resolved, then it's carried throughout life. And it begins to impact all of life for them. And they can begin to demonstrate certain behaviors because they're actually trying to still figure out, well, maybe if I do it this way, I could have some friends. Maybe if I do it this way, maybe I can figure this out. But if they can't, and it's never really been identified and worked through, how resilient are they? Do you remember the categories I shared with you about looking at the pediatric population or looking at children? We're looking at fine motor, gross motor, social communication, adaptation. And this is where this resiliency or lack of resiliency is going to really make adapting to different environments really difficult. But again, that little person or that teenager or that young adult still may not be able to pinpoint what it actually is, but rather because it's been going on for so long, they just innately believe it. They believe that they're not okay. You know, I watch this in so many children that come to this office. I see it every week. And one of the things that we do around here, and we teach, first of all, I am very big on teaching. I think I could also explain resiliency with giving you a little bit of a background on me and how this podcast came to be. I love to teach. I have been teaching for many, many years. And I feel so blessed for the information that God has stewarded me with. And I love to share it. And about 3 years ago, when everything was being canceled, I was supposed to go to Paris and teach at a research conference on pediatrics. And I was excited. Excitement. Remember, I'm always telling you, think about these words for a second. Excitement is how the brain learns. The brain loves novelty. The brain loves to get excited about whatever it is that they're doing. But if you're always beaten down, you're not going to get excited about anything. So when everything was being canceled, I decided I'm going to start a podcast. Now, back at the beginning, it was very low budget, and they're out there somewhere, but they're not the ones on the YouTube. And then I found my podcast manager, Marcy, which I just think the world of, and really brought this podcast up to a new level. But what it gave me is that even though things were being taken away, what did I do with it? I created something new, and I created something that I was very excited about. And I do a podcast every week and share this information so that more people can be helped, rather than when everything seemed like it was being pulled away from me, I didn't withdraw back. Remember the word withdraw reflexes. You have enough situations in your life that keep pulling you back and pulling you back and pulling you back. Eventually you get stuck. And I didn't do that. I didn't get stuck. In fact, the woman that cuts my hair, she goes, "This is the one thing I love about you. You're always reinventing when you need to." That's such a compliment. But I want to teach kids how to do that too. I want to teach you how to do that too. We don't want to get stuck. There's so many ways that we can go about that. And that's what we teach our kids here. For example, when they're doing their aerobics, every time I'm on the floor with them, "So why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this?" They at least all know that they're here for their brain. So if there is nothing else that I'm giving these kids, they realize they have a brain and we're working on it. But we teach them about their target heart rate. We teach them about stress chemicals and how they lock down on an area of the brain called the hippocampus and really block learning and memory. And when you do aerobic activity, you burn off that fuel of stress and you actually lay down a protein that's going to enhance new learning for 48 hours. I've had kids, young adults, call me years later and thank me for teaching them a basic aerobic formula of how to handle stress. Well, we do that with each child that we work with here. The other day, young man getting frustrated on the eye therapy again, not celebrating the solid circles, only beating himself up over the rings, and started to really express the frustration verbally. Whoa, 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 time out. Let's think about this differently. If you could do everything that we're asking you to do, you wouldn't be here. This is your gym. This is the place that you get to go to and train. That's what it is at Connect My Brain. Another little cherub came in crying. I don't want to be here. We hear that. You know, when kids are tired, when they're just getting out of school or something's going on at home, yeah, they get frustrated. So what do? We meet them where they are. Meet yourself where you are. Meet your child where they are. You don't completely let it all go, but you reshape it. You change the perspective. And especially in that emotional high, and you're able to bring in a new perspective, you are now changing the firing pattern in the brain. Okay, let's connect a dot here. We talked about what happens when we get anxious or worried. That's an event, and the amygdala is going, hey, 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 potential threat. So even a child being tired, or perhaps they got a little injury and they're just not feeling it today, they're raising up that emotion. This event, this encounter between me and Dr. Laura, this is an event. Which way is it going to go? Is the amygdala going to code it as a threat? Well, if I looked at the little person and I said, too bad, get up there, get working, do this, do that, that would create an event, and it would tie a negative association to what we are trying to do at this office. But rather, we sit down. We ask the question, what's going on today? Why don't you want to be here? It's not a personal threat. What is it for you? Something's hurting. Okay, guess what? We can take care of that too. We can take care of what's hurting. And then let's put you on the pulse table. That pulse table, I tell you, I see so many wonderful shifts in people. It's a pulse electromagnetic frequency table. It has a variety of frequencies, and we can actually meet the person where they are in the appropriate frequency, and they can chill out. And what happened in that moment was that little cherub realized that everything isn't set in stone. We can meet you where you are. You're safe. You can trust us. And that's going to change how they respond to other emotional events. Now, of course, we got to build up some traction. I can't be the only one that responds in that direction. But I can also teach parents. This is the tendency for this little one to get very upset. I think they just need a moment and they need somebody to hear them. And what are you creating? You're creating the ability to communicate what you are feeling so that it doesn't get all stuffed down inside. You know, so many people can have chemistry issues going on in their body that can make emotional struggles very difficult to work through. And that one that I see over and over and over again is when there is a mutation on an MTHFR. That is your methylation pathway. And this is how we get toxins out of our body. And sometimes what can happen is that the system, when you're in that emotional uproar and you're having a fight or flight, and the chemistry inside of the body is surging up like a tsunami. It almost like it gets stalled and it backs up, and the rage goes on and on and on until they can finally push the stress chemicals through and get on the other side of it. And then there's a very calm ripple in that wave. There's many reasons why we get emotional. That's why I am a huge advocate of looking at the chemistry. In fact, with everyone that I assess, I bring about that there is the mechanical part. Did my body come wired? Did it wire like it should? It comes with what it needs, but it's got to practice it so that it can move from the lower brain to the midbrain to the high brain. But there's always a chemistry going on. And as you know, I do a lot of neuro and biofeedback. And when we do the brain mapping, I'm letting the parent know this picture of your child's brain has everything to do with what their developmental path looked like. I was talking to someone the other day, and no one had ever even told them that the possibility or why your child possibly is not processing information correctly is because your child never crawled. That's a big one. These little developmental milestones, they're not just a good thing. They're necessary. Your history is your blueprint as to how you came together. And when we look at that, it's like unraveling a tangle in a necklace. As you open up that tangle, you begin to see how if I pull the loop this way and I grab from the other end and I pull this way, I can release where something got stuck. And yes, that's what this is about. It's about, are you getting stuck? I'm working with kids. I'm watching some of them. Literally, the stuck is getting formed right in front of me. And we just cannot have that. Their greatest potential is to make sure that they're not getting stuck. Making sure that the expectation of what they can do, that they have, or let me rephrase that. The expectation of your child that they have what they need to meet it. And if they don't, they don't have to be stuck. We just have to figure out what it is. I always refer to this as setting up dominoes. I love when people set dominoes up and that they can work on this for hours, maybe even days. And they build these incredible flow of little cubes. And then it's one push and it completely sequentially moves. That's the way I look at development. It's a path, it's a journey. And sometimes one of those dominoes fell prematurely. Let's pick it back up. Let's pick it back up and put it in place. We go, we figure out the root of what is going on. But I'm afraid that we're brushing off a lot of things that kids really do feel only because we don't understand it. Now, I also think, because I do this all the time, I have conversations with them and they get it. I don't think it needs to be thought of that they've got something, pathologically wrong. Lots of times they're looking for a way to express themselves. And I'd like to make an example of something I shared with you eons ago, it seems like, but it has to do with our emotions. Okay. So back in about 1960, the year I was born, which I think is so interesting, that is actually when Big Pharma started coming out with medications for depression, anxiety, etc. So we call those psychotropic medications. And so when a person would go to see their doctor and say, I'm just really depressed, now they had a new tool in their bag and prescriptions were written for those very various emotional feelings. Now, again, I'm not taking away from any profession. I'm not taking away from anything anybody else is going through. Okay. I just want to make that clarification. I want to make this as an example of what it is that I'm trying to illustrate here is that nobody asked them, what are you depressed about? What are you anxious about? Those are real emotions. And rather than stuffing and getting stuck and never having that opportunity to tell someone, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be in the confines of counseling. And again, not to take away from counseling. I think that is an incredible profession, but not everything merits that next step. Some things absolutely do. Sometimes it's just about having somebody explain something to you because you haven't experienced it yet. And that's the world of a child. A child is trying to understand this world. And oftentimes, every new situation, depending upon your age, is new. And having the connection to be able to ask questions, have somebody give feedback, have somebody show a more appropriate way or an easier way for them is all they're really looking for. Kids just fascinate me, and I love working with them and I love talking to them. And I encourage any listener who has the opportunity to have a conversation with a child, open your ears and really hear what that child is saying. Thanks so much for tuning in. I always enjoy talking to you. If you want to send in a question or a comment, you can always go to the website and we have a page that you can contact us. You can call the office 678-501-5172. Feel free to reach out. We love when you reach out with questions or comments or just want to chat and see, is Connect My Brain the right place for you or your child? And we do the same thing. Are we the right fit for you? Thanks for tuning in. Be blessed.